All right. So this happened, I guess, over the weekend. I'm a little bit confused by having done the show on Sunday. But Donald Trump, there was a couple of pieces in the New York Times that broke over the past couple of days. One is that the FBI had opened an investigation, a counterintelligence investigation. That is different from a criminal investigation. There is no report that's issued from there are no charges that are issued necessarily. I mean, it is one specifically to sort of protect assets. And the Times piece said nothing was found, but I'm not sure if that is conclusive. But leave it at that, at the very least. Also, what broke this week was that Donald Trump went to great lengths, according to the Washington Post, to prevent anybody from getting any type of read about what happened in his meeting with Putin, and literally took the translator's notes.
Private.
You know,
it's private.
Classic stuff you do.
Who are you, Jeff Bezos?
I want those notes.
And, you know, like I guess it's conceivable that Donald Trump is just such a sophisticated guy that and is trying to do something that is so remarkable that he would, as opposed to like what he said to Duterte or others, that he, was worried about the deep state, particularly that early in his, because this is a guy who has probably read quite a bit of the history of the machinations of the U.S. government. And probably understood from a bureaucratic standpoint who you want to prevent stuff from getting to, right? I mean, that's not hard to believe.
Total reader. And well-versed in all of these pitfalls. So at the very least, he's not defensive at all. He went on Jeanine Pirro's show. And Jeanine Pirro, folks, I'm sure most of you know what we mean in the biz by a softball question. Well, here's what happened when someone pitches you a softball and you are so defensive that you whip out a machine gun and try and shoot at it.
Have you ever worked for Russia, Mr. President?
I think it's the most insulting thing I've ever been asked. I think it's the most insulting article I've ever had written. And if you read the article, you'd see that they found absolutely nothing. But the headline of that article, it's called The Failing New York Times for a reason. They've gotten me wrong for 3 years. They've actually gotten me wrong for many years before that. But you look at what's going on. I fired James Comey. I call him Lion James Comey because he was a terrible liar, and he did a terrible job as the FBI director. Look at what happened with Hillary Clinton and the emails and the Hillary Clinton investigation, one of the biggest screw-ups that anybody's ever seen as an investigation. And what happened after I fired him, Andrew McCabe, Peter Strzok, his lover, Lisa Page.
Pause it for 1 second right now.
She's so messy.
It's Jeanine.
His lover, Lisa Page.
Jeanine,
we remember that too.
Jeanine Pirro is sitting there going like, I was joking. I said it as a joke. Did I not communicate that? That's all she's saying right in her head.
Setting you up to dunk.
She, literally, they've cut away. This is all B-roll because she's got this thing going. I'm convinced at this point she's looking around going, like, what's going on with this guy? Go ahead.
They did it. And, they're all gone. Most of those people, many, many people from the top ranks of the FBI, they've all been fired or they had to leave. And they're all gone. This is what they were talking about. And obviously nothing was found. And I can tell you this, if you ask the folks in Russia, I've been tougher on Russia than anybody else, probably any other president, period. But certainly the last 3 or 4 presidents, modern-day presidents, nobody's been as tough as I have from any standpoint, including the fact that we're doing oil like we've never done it. We're setting records in our country with oil and exporting oil and many other things. So, which is obviously not great for them because that's where they get their money for the most part. But many other things. So I think it was a great insult, and the New York Times is a disaster as a paper. It's a very horrible thing they said, and they've gone so far that people that weren't necessary believers are now big believers because they said that was a step too far. They really are a disaster of a newspaper.
Well,
and still no actual denial.
Right.
Insulted. I'm so
I'm
insulted.
just disgusted. I'm telling. It's so funny. I'm listening to this Crime Town podcast about the Kwame Kilpatrick mayoral reign in Detroit, and it all looks like totally nothing compared to this. But one of the things he's a lot more articulate than Trump, but he always did that. Like, I think that question is insulting.
Right.
And I think the fact that you would ask that in front of the people is not only an insult to them and to me, but even you and your job as a journalist.
You've
like,
insulted
you just go
yourself.
on and on and on. And it's like that, except, with also a guy who's losing all of his faculties in his 70s.
And a friendly journalist.
Facilities.
He couldn't see, to be fair, he couldn't see her, right? Because
Right.
he was just on the phone because she's doing the old laughing. And he apparently was just, this is the thing is that when you snort Adderall, I think what it does is it makes it much harder to pick up on social cues.
What?
And I think that's probably the problem.
I thought how you treated Robert Durst was totally unfair.
You are not going to be Attorney General now, Jeanine Pirro.
Yeah.
So
I was
Let's
going to
not
make you
blame-
Attorney General and head of the Space Force, but now nothing. Nothing.
Let's not blame a perfectly good stimulant for Trump's shortcomings, all right?
I'm-
Snorting
I-
Adderall is great.
I'm sure that's true, but I
All right.
would not go on.
Are you
if
sure that's true?
If you're very well, I'm not sure.
I was gonna say.
I mean, I can imagine it's possible, but I think if you're in a very defensive state, I would not go on national cable TV and try and defend yourself about.
I'm alone. Piru's on the line. What does she want? She's my friend. Wait, Russia? She's not my friend anymore.
God.
Hey, Mike.
All right.
That's John, sir. I don't care. By the way, that is the best piece of news that's come out of the White House.
The Kevin McCarthy thing?
No, that Trump calls John Bolton Mike. He doesn't know who he is.
Whatever. You look like a Mike.
Mustache Mike.
There's
over
no
here.
Mustache Mike over
There's
here.
no way you'd have a mustache like that unless you're a Mike.
You'd never
Folks.
be able to succeed in the condo business.
We're going to take a quick break.